People say this all the time. People say Iran is the the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. What does that mean? It means that they have built up proxies, right, in the Middle East, in part to satisfy one of their primary objectives, which is to destroy Israel. So they have built, essentially, and sponsored and funded and trained and resourced Hezbollah up in Lebanon, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis in Yemen. I'll stick with those three for now, but they're all creations, essentially, of Israel, or of Iran. If Iran didn't provide them with support and funding and guidance and training and missiles and weapons, we wouldn't be talking about this today.
Let's shift to some of the fires in the world right now. There are many fires, but as we sit here right now, just I think about 2 hours ago, the Biden administration has reinstated the Houthis as a terrorist organization.
Yeah,
they were a terrorist organization under Trump. Biden, one of the first things he came in and did was undo that. Mm-hmm. Now we got a big problem. Can you explain who the Houthis? Give me like Houthi 101. What's going on in Yemen? Can you clean that up for the average person that's just watching another fire in the world and going, why should I care? Why does this matter?
Yeah. So the Houthis.
We see the dancing videos. They've got a great choreographer.
Oh my God!
They get their guys out there with the music.
Yeah. And I tell you what, you want to. I mean, Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, is a fascinating place, right? It's very interesting, and it's an interesting culture. It's a really, and that's the thing. You look at it and go, okay, well, you guys are pretty fucked up, but it's a fascinating place, great history, great culture. Let's get this under control. But they basically have had a civil war in Yemen, raging for quite some time. And I don't want to oversimplify this, but a lot of the violence, a lot of the death, a lot of the instability in that region. If you say, well, what the hell's going on? It's essentially a Sunni Shia problem, right? So the Saudis, they're Sunni, Iran Shia, right? If you know nothing else about it, then just you kind of say, okay, you got two teams, and they're going at each other in terms of their belief systems. Iran has been supporting the Houthis. They find it in their best interest. People say this all the time. People say Iran is the the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. What does that mean? It means that they have built up proxies, right, in the Middle East, in part to satisfy one of their primary objectives, which is to destroy Israel. So they have built, essentially, and sponsored and funded and trained and resourced Hezbollah up in Lebanon, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis in Yemen. I'll stick with those three for now, but they're all creations, essentially, of Israel, or of Iran. If Iran didn't provide them with support and funding and guidance and training and missiles and weapons, we wouldn't be talking about this today, right? Because Hamas wouldn't be anywhere near where it is, right? But they do Iran's bidding, in a sense. I'm oversimplifying a little bit. They've got their own interests as well, but that's where they take their guidance from, for the most part. So you've got the Houthis sitting in Yemen. They claim that they've started this latest issue, this rocketing of commercial and now U.S. Navy warships in the Red Sea, in sympathy and support of Hamas, right, and against Israel. It's not as if the Houthis sat there to themselves. They're in a very tenuous ceasefire right now in their conflict with they don't control. They're not recognized as the government of Yemen. The recognized government of Yemen is supported by the Saudis, right? The Houthis supported by the Iranians, but there's a very tenuous ceasefire there that exists. It's not as if the Houthis would have said to themselves on their own, without Iranian encouragement and guidance, you know what we should do? We should take some of these Iranian-provided missiles and anti-ship missiles and start blasting them out and really disrupting global trade. Right? That Red Sea channel, that accounts for 15%, 17% of global shipping traffic, right? most major shipping lines, Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, and most major companies, Shell, BP, others, just shut down their operations. They're rerouting all their traffic around the Cape of Good Hope. So that adds extra days, adds about 9 days on depending on routes we're talking about. That's fuel costs, that's crew costs, that's shipping, it's just everything that gets into that. Everything starts to become a problem. And so the Houthis, it's not like they did this on their own. What our problem is, from a U.S. perspective and our allies' perspective, is that the Biden administration currently won't address the primary driver of all this, which is Iran, right? So the Iranians made the calculation, the regime, not the people. Look, the history of Iran's fantastic, right? Yep. And the people are great, but it's the regime and the RGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. They know, because they've been doing this for a long time, that they can continue to destabilize the region, and they're not going to be paying for it directly, right? Any response is going to be directed at one of their proxies.
Right.
So that was a calculation they made. The Biden administration is playing that out for sure. You know, they early on in the conflict, they didn't want to talk about Iran. Right now, they've at least mentioned it obliquely. This designation that you raise is interesting because President Trump did designate them as a foreign terrorist organization. You've got different levels of designation, right? When you say, okay, that group, Hamas, or that group over there, we want to designate them as terrorists. You can do that at various levels, and it has different impacts in terms of what actions can then be taken against the group. So the Trump administration listed Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization, and then Trump in February of 21, or sorry, Biden when he came in, so it was February of 2021, reversed that decision. And he reversed it because the UN and others were saying, oh, this is terrible. You know, you can't keep them on the terrorist list because it's hurting, Yemen. It's hurting the people of Yemen. And, they're not getting humanitarian aid. And well, most of that humanitarian aid was getting rifled through by the Houthis anyway.
Right. It sounds exactly like what's happened with Hamas and with Hezbollah.
Exactly. Basically. That's exactly right. Yeah. Hamas the leadership is rich because of all the billions that they control when money and aid goes into Gaza, right? So anyway, but with the Houthis, the Biden administration had no choice. I think from an optic, for politics, they realized, okay, we now have to reverse our own decision. So now they've this week.
You mean they had no choice now? Then
yes.
Do you think then the idea was, well, Trump did it, so we're just going to reverse it?
Yeah, like everything else.
In essence, yeah.
Yeah, I think like everything else with the border decisions, that they took on the border, ridiculous, right? But it was that idea that if Trump did it, it must have been bad, right? And so let's just change it all because that'll show how righteous we are, right? So they did that with the Houthis, and now they've decided to go and reverse their thinking because they had no choice, right? I mean, the media has finally picked up on this and said, okay, there's a lot going on here and we're being targeted. It's only a matter of time, before something bad happens. And then, so I think they wanted to get ahead of it a little bit, right? And so what they've done is they haven't gone with the foreign terrorist organization designation. They went with a lesser designation, which is the specially designated global terrorist, right? So whatever that is, that's an acronym. I'm sure it's a government acronym, SGDT.
Right.
So that is still important. No, don't get me wrong. I'm glad they did it, but it's not the strongest the action that they could take against the Houthis. So what they've done here is they're saying, okay, we're going to designate you as terrorists. We're going to call you terrorists, and that can allow us to freeze assets to a degree, but it still allows for humanitarian aid to go in. Again, the problem is if it goes into Hodeidah, if it goes into the main port there in Yemen, that's controlled by the Houthis. So humanitarian aid will, whether it gets to the actual people who deserve it, need it, et cetera, just like with the citizens of Gaza. It's anybody's guess.
How much of the craziness that we're seeing right now, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's in Yemen and what's going on with Red Sea and everything, is connected back to the $6 billion that just a couple weeks before October 7th, they were saying, oh, well, it's fungible. Who knows what they're going to do with it? After they had originally said, no, it can't go to certain things. And then suddenly it was like, oh, we gave them the cash. Well, we'll see.
Yeah. Don't know. Yeah, we can't keep track of our own money here. Yeah. I'm sure we can watch it, money flowing out of Qatar for the Iranians. Yeah, you know what? I think it was definitely the wrong move. It was a stupid move. It was misguided on their part. Did it contribute to what's going on now? Not really, because the Iranians have been making bank off of oil anyway, right? They've been making money. So I'm not saying that the $6 billion wasn't important, because it was, right? And in other additional funds that were going there, that wasn't the only tranche of money that went to the Iranian regime from the Biden administration. But they were making money anyway, because we haven't clamped down on their primary source of revenue, which is energy, right? Same with Russia. We've made the same mistake with Putin, and the Iranians are selling from to China and Russia, so they have buyers, right? But it does point to just this misguided foreign policy that the Biden administration has had towards Iran. And I get it, they were doing what they believed in. Administration comes in, they're going to make their own decisions. But it seems opposite of what history has told us, right? Every time the U.S. has extended their hand, right, to try to make some deal or negotiate or make peace with the Iranians, the regime smacks it away, right? And they keep on doing what they've been doing. And so I don't know why they expected to get some different reaction.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop screaming, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist, all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.